Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya Rivero. Thank you for joining us. It is a busy day of voting on Capitol Hill. The House is weighing President Biden's $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. Lawmakers spent the morning debating 29 amendments to the package. Later in the afternoon, the House will debate and vote on the rule of the plan. A final vote should come around 9 p.m. Eastern. The measure is expected to pass, likely along party lines. The package will provide $1,400 stimulus checks to many Americans. It also gives a boost of $400 per week in unemployment insurance. The plan includes plenty of emergency funding. The primary targets are reopening schools, rental and food assistance, vaccine distribution, and supporting state and local governments. However, a $15 minimum wage increase will not be in the final version of the legislation. Yesterday, the Senate parliamentarian ruled the provision cannot be voted on in the upper chamber using the simple majority reconciliation process. It is a major blow to President Biden, who has made raising the federal rate of $7.25 an hour a top priority. It's also a disappointment to the estimated 1.6 million Americans who earn the federal minimum wage, as well as the millions of hourly workers who still make less than $15 an hour. House Democrats are expected to include it in their bill regardless, but they will have to find another way to make it a reality. For more, I want to bring in Representative Haley Stevens. She's a Democrat serving Michigan's 11th district, which includes the suburbs north and west of Detroit. She sits on the House Education and Labor Committee and chairs the House Science Subcommittee on Research and Technology. Representative Stevens, welcome. It's great to have you with us. Should House Democrats make the $15 minimum wage their top priority once the COVID relief bill is passed?
It's absolutely a top priority, Taryn, and I think it will continue to be. I proudly voted for the raise the wage in my first term in Congress, debated it in House Education and Labor Committee markup, and am ready to go with this. So we know what it takes to move this through the House. We're going to vote on it today. We know it'll languish in the Senate. We'll do it again, and we will be ready to go. This is long overdue. It is absolutely unconscionable that we have people in America working full time and yet earning a wage that makes them qualified for federal benefits, because that is a poverty wage.
And Representative, do you view this $1.9 trillion package as the final COVID stimulus relief bill? And if not, what should future bills include? And are you comfortable moving forward without Republican lawmakers' support?
Yeah, loaded question, but I'll say this. We have been in COVID triage for a very long time. We just hit 500,000 lives lost tragically to this virus. We are working furiously to get the shots in everyone's arm. We are working to make sure that we continue to have testing, $130 billion to get our schools back safely. I know in Michigan, we are all ready for that. We are ready to reopen our schools. And then when you start thinking about the next phases of this, we are going to have to evaluate what full recovery looks like for this economy. I've also heard and paid very close attention to what the economists have said, and they have endorsed this plan along with the Chamber of Commerce because it does go very far in terms of helping particularly our small businesses, which are very critical to recovery. So the story with COVID-19 isn't going to end with the passage of this bill. And you also asked me about bipartisan support. And I'm always holding out for it, all right? I'm a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus. I work very well with the other side of the aisle, got bills passed and signed into law last term under a different president, and we'll see. I would be very surprised, though, if they really hold firm on this and we don't get any Republican votes. I think that's a mistake because the American people, over 60% of the American people, are for this legislation, as well as a host of bipartisan outside elected office stakeholders who have endorsed this package.
And you certainly have experience with rescue bills. You worked for the Obama administration's Auto Rescue Task Force back in 2009, as well as in the Treasury Department during the previous recession stimulus bills. What lessons did you learn from how the recovery played out 10 years ago that lawmakers should keep in mind now?
Well, the one thing we've always got to be measuring in terms of success with rescue packages, and this is something that we saw in the U.S. Auto Rescue. It was the largest industrial managed bankruptcy in the history of the United States. You had GM going through that process. It was almost unthinkable that they'd ever be in bankruptcy. We had a variety of stakeholders, including the communities themselves where these plants are located, on the line. And so it was a large amount of money that was spent, but the taxpayers were repaid. GM re-entered the stock market during that repayment period, and we saw a return on spend. And so what I believe, and what's been calculated out with this rescue package, and what has been endorsed from the chairman of the Fed to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, is that we're going to see that return on the dollars. We know, case in point with education, that always comes back into the Treasury. We know with our small businesses, 9 in 10 almost of our minority small businesses being on the brink of foreclosure or closing down. We need to make sure that they get through to the other side of this pandemic. And so 2008, 2009, different crisis than what we're dealing with today, but there are some similarities, some things that are rhyming here for us. And I'm certainly very proud to have played a role in saving GM and Chrysler and the hundreds of suppliers that relied on those OEMs, and bringing that experience on behalf of the great people of Michigan to our United States Congress every single day.
Well, speaking of suppliers and the auto industry, I want to ask you about President Biden's executive order this week to review the U.S. supply chain. Computer chips will be at the forefront of that review, particularly semiconductor chips, crucial for Michigan automakers. How have these shortages hurt your constituents? And how did we get to this point where the U.S. doesn't have enough supply and has to rely so, forcefully on foreign manufacturers?
Well, hallelujah that we have a president for almost the first time ever who's willing to really tackle the supply chain issues that we face as a nation. This has to do with commodities and accessibility to things that frankly, like the chips, that aren't in infinite supply. And the reason why we got here, and the reason why we have this chip shortage, and to explain this to everyone tuning in, is because we do have a lot of chip manufacturers in the United States. Where they're producing them happens to be outside of the United States. We're only producing about 20% of the chips in our country. My district office in Livonia, by the way, is around the corner from a chip manufacturer. It's great. We have seen, though, an incredible uptick in this pandemic for demand for more laptops, cell phone devices that require those chips. And so the demand went askew. And so now what we see with automakers who are also asking for these chips is they don't have access to them. And so the plants can't be producing the final assembly of the vehicle without them. And this is why you're seeing the shutdown. So I've got a bill on this. I introduced it last term in Congress because I am a geek for supply chains. It's why I ran for Congress. And it's called the Resilient Manufacturing Resiliency Act, right? The Resilient Manufacturing Supply Chain Act, that will get us to a place where we are bringing the private sector into the federal government and identifying these shortages in real time, so that we could have gotten in front of this a lot sooner and not seen these plant closures. So I really applaud the president on his executive order. I'm very excited about it. My bill is the next phase of it. And then the following phase, right, is identifying these gaps in our supply chain and incentivizing the manufacturing and production capabilities with the manufacturers that we already have here in the United States and on. It's endless potential, but we've got to be acting. We've got to be doing this.
Representative Haley Stevens of Michigan, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.